Once in a while, we get our hands on a big case, and let me tell you, this thing is huge. So huge, I had no idea how to do the B-rolls of the box, not even talking about the struggles of unboxing it. And yes, I did hit the ceiling. But that's not all. We got sound dampening mode, full airflow mode, we got an included phone charger, we got a freaking touchscreen for fan and RGB control, and we got completely cableless fan brackets. Yes, spinning fans without cables. And to top it off, we got so much real estate, you could build a tiny house inside of it. This is the brand new Be Quiet Dark Bass 901. Be Quiet's latest, most insane, most versatile case they offer. But just because it's their most versatile case does not mean that it's good. Let's not forget the Dark Bass 900 Rev 2 and its over-engineered design. Doing anything in there took hours. So let's take a look at everything we can do in here and find out if it's really a pro case or if you just need to be a pro to do anything. The Dark Bass 901 comes in a rather downgraded box looking from the outside. Regular carton with a bit of information. On the inside, however, a nice fabric bag to make sure nothing scratches. And a giant, and I mean giant, box of accessories. And no, I can't use the Be Quiet bag for grocery shopping. It came with a hole, rendering it useless. The aforementioned box of goodies contains a bunch of panels and optional upgrades to which we will get later on. Standing on the table, this behemoth measures about 550mm in height, 605mm in depth, and it is about 250mm thick or wide, depending on how you look at it, but the feet at the bottom do add a little bit to that. Speaking of which, these are very high quality and extremely sturdy feet, including a little rubber pad underneath to make the case more secure and prevent table scratches. Both the left and right side panels are attached using catching thumb screws, which apparently have been drilled in there because of the necessity of using a screwdriver to open them up. The left side panel is the one with the tempered glass, which in an all Be Quiet fashion, it's really thick AF and heavy. Mainly it's heavy. Everything seems good so far, and the only downside, which I did not particularly enjoy, is the fact that Be Quiet decided to go for the decade-old hook mechanic to get the side panels in. Not really the most high quality way of doing it, and it doesn't give you the best feel, but that's what they did. Once all the panels are removed, we will be greeted with another giant box of goodies attached using giant zip ties. This one containing even more pieces, to which we will get in a minute. And now we can finally get a closer look at the case. It is giant. Yeah, this is going to be the theme of the video. Everything is oversized to a point where it's not even funny anymore. Inside this thing you have so much room to build, it's just impressive. Not to say that the compatibility leaves nothing to be wished for, that's not completely true, but as for raw real estate, you have all the space in the world. But let's go over the things we can install inside the base version of the 901. For air coolers, the 901 allows to install up to 190mm high coolers before they start hitting the glass, so basically everything I have ever seen. As for GPU, the same thing. Without any upgrade, we are looking at up to 495mm long cards, so any 4090 will fit just fine, including the Octopus, though I would still recommend using a 90-degree adapter. It makes stuff so much easier to handle inside. But hey, the 8X PCIe brackets are screwed in and reinstallable. By default, the 901 comes with 3 Be Quiet Silent Wing 4 140s spinning at up to 1900 RPM pre-installed. 2 of them in the front as intake and 1 in the back as exhaust. To access the front ones, we can pull off the front panel like on any other case. However, let me tell you, removing the front isn't like anything I have seen before. Sure, not routing any cables to the front panel has been a thing for years, but the clips they used on here are so enjoyable. It's such a nice experience to remove the front panel for once. No excessive pulling. No scratches on my knuckles. It pops off so easily, and then it makes that damp pop sound. It doesn't. The usual sound is something breaking, an unhealthy sound. On here, no. You might get the impression that I'm exaggerating here, but no, believe me, if you popped off any other front panel, this is a different thing. Behind the panel, we'll find an additional dust filter that is clipped in using 4 clips, which should have been magnets in my opinion, but let's give Be Quiet a pass because of the nice front panel mounting here. From there we have this bracket, and on there we will find one of the most amazing features of this case. You see, once you remove the bracket, you'll notice that there are no cables going back to the case. And if your system is running and you pop it back in, the fans will just start spinning. This is because Be Quiet used the pushpin system previously known from RGB front panels and implemented exactly the same thing, but for PWM. So for your front fans, you will use this 3-fan hub, which is being controlled by a PWM cable, or the main controller, from within the main chassis, but there are no cables to the actual fan. Everything is installed on the removable fan bracket. Tuck the cables in just next to the fan, and a working, completely cableless fan bracket. This is amazing, and considering where other cases are right now, this is definitely worthy of being just industry standard. And the exact same thing applies to the top. There we can remove the dust filter by popping it off in the front and then lifting it up. But don't forget to remove the sound dampening panels first. On that note, let's just open the topic very shortly. By default, the complete case comes with sound dampening panels installed. We will talk about the front later on, but for the top, it's not an optional thing. If you want to use the top fan spots, you need to remove them, or they will be glued to the fan, making them choke, which makes them useless or fulfills some of your fantasies. If you're planning to use the top spots, remove them. If not, why not leave them in there and enjoy the additional sound dampening? Or just one of them. Nobody is forcing you to use all of them. You can also use the dual one and install one exhaust fan. You can do what you want, but if you use a fan, remove that one. But once you remove them, we will be greeted with another 3 fan spots using the same type of pushpin bracket. I just hope every case has this from this day on forward. For the standard version of the case, we are looking at a total of 10 fans, 3 140s or 120s in the front, 3 140s or 120s in the top, and the 140 or 120 in the back. As for radiators, up to 360 in the top, up to 420 in the front, and up to 120 or 140 in the back. It's quite unfortunate that Be Quiet did not manage to fit a 420 red in the top, but considering what is in the top or what occupies the front area of the top, I do understand that there had to be some loss, and the 420 red is who took the hit. But okay, still, dual 360 or 420 and 360, that's already something. Actually quite thick ones too, because there is a ton of space in the top and the most front piece of the PSU Shroud can be removed to make space for the thickest thread you can find. Speaking of PSU Shrouds, the PSU is located inside its own separate compartment in the bottom. And to install it, we got the standard bracket that mounts to the PSU. I would have preferred to not have it and just, press it in or press it out from the inside, but apparently this is necessary. But hey, at least we got the nice looking ARGB line going all across the shroud instead of the usual glory hole. And the PSU can be long, like whatever you want long. In front of the PSU Shroud, we will also find the 2 included hard drive cages for either one 3.5-inch drive or 2 2.5-inch drives mounted on the inside each. Adding the 2 2.5-inch slots prepared in the back, we are looking at a total of either 6 2.5-inch drives or 2 3.5-inch and 2 2.5-inch drives. But that's not all, because we still got this weird looking plate, and the reason it looks so weird is that we can pop out each of these placeholders in order to make room for another 5 hard drive brackets, totaling our counter of 3.5-inch drives at 7 or a potential 16 SSDs. Mind you, only 2 are included and the rest needs to be purchased after the fact. And if you are afraid of all of that SATA mess in the back, just close it off using the included panel. Of course, you need to keep in mind that adding additional hard drives to the front might take away space from your GPU if you really want to max it out, or it pretty much blocks off thicker radiator usage in the front. But hey, the fans will still fit, so your spinning artifacts will spin nice and cool. Now let's get to the RGB, because although the name Dark Base wouldn't suggest it, there is RGB. A bit, and it's decent. As mentioned before, there is that thin line going around the PSU Shroud, making a short step downwards to allow the nice looking text to be highlighted. From there, the line continues over the front panel, a very clean and simple implementation. Okay, the usual stuff is covered now, so let's get to the unusual. And if you remember the old Dark Base 900, there is a lot of unusual stuff. Starting off with something I sincerely hoped died decades ago, but somehow it is still alive. This little door on the front panel. No, optical drives. By removing the little separated piece of fan rail and replacing it with this piece found in the accessories box, we can shove in a full-sized DVD reader. Great. To mount it down, Be Quiet actually found a very neat little trick. Instead of a mountain of screws like inside the older Dark Base, we can just press in the center of the PSU Shroud and pop off the side. And from there just screw the fidget spinner down. Using this does come with a set of restrictions. You lose 420 support, you lose the 2 hard drive cages in the bottom as they need to be removed beforehand, and you got a DVD drive, which is like a restriction for itself. No, I'm joking, I'm not using any type of discs anymore, and I haven't done for like 5 years, maybe more, but for somebody who needs them, this is gold. This is a high performance case giving you the option. You are not forced to have it in there, and by default it is not. By default it's hard drives and fans. So this is, in my opinion, a perfect implementation. It's an option with a few restrictions, but at least you're not forced to lose real estate for something that you won't use. Then we got E80X mode. By default, it's up to 80X form factor only, but this restriction doesn't come from the case itself, it's because of the cable hiding bracket on the right side. If you want to use bigger boards, such as the ARS 670E, it's 2 thumb screws and some repositioning, and there you go. But the bracket is not the only thing we can reposition. By removing all of the screws surrounding the PCIe bracket in the back, we can rotate the whole thing and make the case vertical GPU ready. You might still need to bring your own PCIe riser, but Be Quiet has got one on the way as far as I know. But hey, it is built in, you do not need any additional pieces, no extra purchases, just a bunch of screws. And then we got the I/O, oh boy the I/O. In the top, we got an USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, 4 USB 3.2 Type-A's, and an audio in and out. Even though the I/O is impressive for itself, it's not even the impressive part. Back when talking about the cable-less fan brackets, I mentioned the built-in fan controller, and it's in here, and it's touch. We got a fan speed and RGB controller inside using bars to signify the state you are in and controlled over a touchscreen. And compared to switches or, like those things you can shove left and right, this is so cool. You can short press the button, making the fans go faster and faster and faster, or switching through the different built-in RGB modes and colors. And in case that you are too lazy to even tilt your head for 20 degrees and see what you are doing, the bars will indicate you the new mode or color. You do not even have to look at what you've done. And once you're done playing with it, you can also just switch back to motherboard control and let BIOS handle things for you by relying on the PWM and 3-pin RGB cable coming out in the back of the case. Oh, and just don't forget to connect the SATA power cables. You really need them. But Be Quiet was still not done with the I/O, because behind the massive panel we got a 15 watts fast QI charger. How cool is that? The truth is, none of this is new. Both a fan controller and QI charger were already present in the older Dark Base model. This, however, it's a way better implementation. The charger works better, and instead of the movable regulator, we now have touch buttons. This is definitely a very needed upgrade. However, not everything that shines. It's good, don't get me wrong, but the QI charger is slightly picky where you put your phone, and the touch buttons can also miss a few hits. I wouldn't call it flimsy, I really wouldn't, but it could get better in the future. And now let's get to what I would call the most important changes since the original Dark Base: more airflow. In the past, the Dark Base series was notorious for its sound dampening tools, and that wasn't a bad thing. It was excellent at being quiet, but you needed hella strong fans to get some air through. And by default, the 901 follows the same ethos: sound dampening in the top, sound dampening inside the front panel, and the air inlets going all around the case are good, but for a 2010 standard. Every $40 open budget airflow case, which is open in the front of course, will just win. But it doesn't need to be this way. Meet the airflow mode by simply popping off the inside of the front panel and replacing it with the mesh one from the accessories box, meaning included. We now get a ton of air going into the case. This is a pro move. But we are not done. Where originally the hard drive cage was located behind the power supply, we got an additional 120 or 140mm fan spot. And by replacing the last cover of the PSU Shroud with the air redirecting one, we can push additional air from the bottom right into the GPU. And we are still not done, because we can remove the complete panel that is meant to keep additional hard drives in and replace it with the one found in the accessories box, and voila, 3 additional 120mm fan spots which breathe through the backside of the case, which is also mesh, of course next to the sound dampening material. And yes, while developing this thing, the engineers at Be Quiet must have snorted something, because these madmen made that thing reversible. So not only can you choose if you want to route your cables through the left or right side, but you can also push the cables, or you can make sure that the cables are pushed a bit away from the front, creating more space in the case that you want to use radiators. Oh, and yeah, radiators. We can fit another solid 360 on here. Just make sure to not use an incredibly thick one, otherwise you will at some point start to block off the front. Even though the 901 Pro, or Pro 901 for whatever reason, comes in a highly sound dampened version by default, just by using the included material you can turn this thing into an airflow beast, and it's so easy. Every panel pops off in a second, and even replacing the front part takes like a minute in total. Very, very good implementation. And although I don't really like to talk big numbers in a case review, as these are like very specific things, I made sure to test each of these upgrades here with the build that is right next to me. We got a 7950X3D paired with a Be Quiet Silent Loop 360 tuned with 3 Silent Wing 4 Pro fans. Then we got 3 high-speed Silent Wing 4s on the side, the 120s, and we got all of the Silent Wing 4s 140 spinning at 1900 RPM in the front, in the back, and in the bottom. We started off by just allowing the original fans without any upgrades to spin. So the top ones, the front ones, and the back one. The side and bottom were not spinning. Then I replaced the front mesh filter, or the front solid one, with the mesh filter, and I saw roughly half a degree of an improvement. Then we added the 3 fans on the side by making them spin, and we saw another half degree improvement, and in total we came to about 1 degree C. Mind you, all the fans were still spinning at a very, very minimum number here. So these 2 upgrades definitely created a difference that was measurable even under the very, very low spinning circumstances. For the PSU Shroud, no matter what I did to the fan, while Thermoc is running at max, no gain. Not even a minimal jump or down on the GPU temperature whatsoever. No matter what the fan speed of every fan was, no matter what the fan speed of the GPU was, nothing budged there. Very, very unfortunate, but that's just how it is, and it seems like the bottom one is just a gimmick. And I can understand why, because if you make the one in the bottom spin like crazy and you put your hands onto that redirecting thing, you cannot feel it. Or you can sense it, but it's not like air is blasting on there. The distance seems to be just too big to make any difference, or you need like 30mm, 35mm thick fan spinning at 3000 RPM to do something. A regular fan just won't do anything. Okay, let's go over a few more normal things from here on. In the box of goodies, we'll find another box of goodies containing the usual stuff like Velcro ties. But then what's a bit unusual are the spacers and extremely long fan screws. And actually, the front pre-mounted fans already use them. They are there because by default, sound dampening mode is in, and you need that space if you don't want to make them choke. If you want to keep the sound dampening and you want to add a third fan, use the spacer. If you go for airflow anyway, do whatever the hell you want. You can remove the 2 that are pre-installed and just snap the fans with regular screws in there. That works too, it won't change anything. But sound dampening, then use the spacers. Then there's this and what looks like the most transformer looking GPU anti-sag bracket. And that thing is actually also a cable hider. Because not only can you use the 2 movable arms to squish and hold your GPU, but you can align it with your GPU's connectors and use the built-in feature to finally hide that awful looking octopus. And it conveniently attaches to the PSU Shroud using magnets. Given a 4 cable octopus's thickness, it's going to be very, very tight. But regular 8-pin, that's an easy fit. But an octopus will barely go through there, but it will. And the connector might push the whole thing to the outside, so I would still recommend to use some sort of adapter just to get away from that angle. But hey, this looks perfectly fine in my opinion. I think this was it. Yeah, this was it. Okay, or at least I hope so. The video is already like 25 minutes long at this point, but it's a necessary length. This case is so incredibly full of features, it was never going to be a quick and easy review. But actually there is kind of more, like the inverted layout mode, which was already present on the 900 Pro. But we will not go over it in this video, that could be a video on its own. If you want to do that, you can, but you might want to have a look at Be Quiet's guide on how to do it. It's a pretty well made video, so they did a fine job. And we have stuff like the option to take out the complete center of the case to build the PC outside. Not really sure how you would win any time by doing that. The additional time of taking it out but okay, you can do it. But to give the case some sort of summary, the engineers truly learned a lot moving from the 900 to the 901. Looking realistically, the feature set is pretty similar, or there haven't been like enormous changes in terms of what you can and cannot do. But I remember the 900. I remember how insanely over-engineered that thing was. I remember that it took like 15 minutes to get that fan in the bottom of the PC in. I remember that it took what felt like 20 random distributed screws to remove the PSU shroud, which you needed to remove. And everything was a drag. It was cool how much you could do, but everything took hours. But not anymore. Here it's a click, a press, a pop. Everything takes seconds. It's the biggest improvement in my opinion is the fact that you can do everything without it taking forever. Everything is well thought through. The engineer really did learn a lot. A highly complicated build that would have taken like a solid hour inside the 900, in here it takes like 15 minutes. So yeah, they did a fine job and they do deserve a cookie. And the quality saw some improvements too. The panel pop mechanics are amazing, the RGB implementation is solid, the I/O is off the chart, the airflow mode brings what a case in 2023 really needs, the space in the back combined with a ton of brackets, the cable tie slots makes cable management in the back easy as hell, and even if the buttons are not as accurate as a smartphone, they still did a fine job basically everywhere. Especially because of the push-pin PWM signal, hands down, my favorite feature of the year. So in my opinion, the Dark Base Pro 901 is worthy of its name. It's a pro case, it's black as hell, and it's so far, I would even say, the best overall case I have seen for this year. In all the points that the 900 failed, the 901 succeeded by a mile. But with options, a ton of options. And cable management, so much space in the back, and we have well distributed holes to get the cables to the front, and on the top for the CPU power cable, it's lowered by a shit ton and you can press any cable through there. It's very well thought through. But let's talk price. Oof, a pro case coming at a pro price, I guess. A pretty hefty price if you ask me, but can be kinda worth it for high-end builds, and I mean really high-end builds. If you are going all in on the components and you need the space and cooling, it's kind of the way to go. It looks amazing in my opinion, and the quality is exactly where I expected it to be. You get 3 140mm 99 RPM silent wing 4 fans, and thus the case is theoretically ready from the go for a very good build, but you can push it a lot higher if you add more. Just don't forget about your trip to the local recycling center, because you will definitely need it. I think this should be all for the Be Quiet Dark Bass Pro 901. At this point, a huge thank you to Be Quiet for sending it over. On a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you wanna join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel memberships, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to bring me down, because the Dark Bass Pro 901 is the climax. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the Fantex G500A, also an amazing case. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.